welcome to Dip In and Out with Lucy, the podcast that opens up the discussion around domestic abuse. I'm very excited to be here this morning with Anna Knight. Anna is a coach around cycle breakers and change makers, and I think there's only one person that can explain that in any kind of detail, and that is Anna herself. So over to you, Anna.
Good morning, Lucy. I'm so excited. So yeah, cycle breakers and change breakers. What I found is that most activists never set out as a childhood dream, like when I grow up, I'm going to be an activist. What tends to happen is, in my experience, that we experience something, we have a personal connection to our cause, and that's what fuels the fire. That's what makes us want to do what we do. So with my activism, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. I campaign around domestic abuse. My cat has come to join us.
It's all welcome.
Yeah. My assistant calls this me wearing my cat hat because he likes to sit on the back of the chair. Yeah, so I have the lived experience of domestic violence, and I decided to be a campaigner.
Yeah.
We'll just put Goose down on the floor.
Goose.
And that is common for a lot of people, that we've experienced some kind of life-changing event, or in the case of people who've experienced domestic violence, as you know, it's not just one event, it's a series of events, it's a pattern, it's a cycle. And when we're out, when we're safe, we get the passion to help other people. We want to support people. We want to stop it from happening to other people. But we still have the legacy of those things we've experienced. We still have the rules that we formed to keep ourselves safe.
Yeah.
And in my experience, what that was meaning for my activism is that I was playing it small because I didn't want to be seen. At some level, I was going, yes, I want to change the world, but oh my God, no one look at me. And I needed coaching to break that cycle. I wanted to break the cycle of domestic violence, but I needed to break my own cycles first. I needed to be much less self-critical. I needed to be able to talk to myself kindly. I needed to understand what my brain was doing before I could change the brains of other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh God, that's a very good point to make. Yeah.
And once I'd done it for myself, I realized that I wasn't alone in this. I was already doing coaching with survivors of domestic violence, helping them work out where they wanted to go next. And overwhelmingly, the answer was, I want to do something. I want to make this mean something. I want to change the world in some way. But to do that, we needed to kind of break that self-talk. We needed to learn how to be kind to ourselves. So I kind of pivoted the coaching I was doing to still work with people who've experienced trauma, whether that is domestic violence, whether that is another kind of trauma, and to help them both in their personal lives and in their wider work to be the person they want to be. I think you hear some coaches talk about, sorry, moving the cat again.
I have actually kept mine out of the room, but otherwise he would be all over the place. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, we used to have a door for this room until one day he barged it off the hinges because he was so desperate to join in a Facebook Live that I was doing. So now he just comes and goes as he pleases.
Quite right, as a cat should.
Yeah, if anyone is wondering what a coaching session with me is like, there is a certain percentage of cat in it.
But that breaks the ice, you see. That's good. That's good.
That's what he does. I like to joke he's my assistant.
Yeah, well, you could get him put into work. There you go. Earn his keep.
If only he paid rent.
Oh God, yeah. Oh my God, I love it. So, and the thing is, when you were just saying them before, you have to look at yourself before you can even consider trying to make these big impacts, these big changes. It's so true, isn't it? Because there's so much for yourself to work through and understand, because you can't understand domestic abuse as a whole because everybody's experience is unique. I always say each time is there will be threads where there's similarities, but it's not going to be identical. It will be that there are things that are different, but you have to understand your own experience before you can begin to understand other people's, because you will compare and you will, you know, it's a natural instinct, isn't it, that we kind of go, oh yeah, I know that, all right, yeah, I understand that. But we have to begin at the very beginning, which is go back, look at ourselves, work through our own traumas before we can help others. Otherwise, we're not going to be equipped to go the distance and help people, are we? It's not going to be able to stand the test of time. And I think that's a really important point to make, because a lot of the time as well, I think people who are helped, whether it's in group settings, whether it's in coaching, however, you know, whether it's one-to-one, is you need to be able to feel that trust, and that, you know, building up that trust with somebody, and that takes time. And it's a very, very difficult it's a difficult enough subject at the best of times, but it's even more difficult when you're also trying to process something yourself, and be present with that person and help them. But aside from all of that, you've also done a chapter in I was going to talk a bit about the Audacious and, but I thought you might want to explain a bit more about that, because that is your gig and I love it. And I've started to take it on board myself in my own life, I have to say.
I love it. Like, it's totally like I've turned it into my brand, but it's totally a mission. Like, I am not precious about it. I want everyone to have the audacious and. So it came about one day when I used to run a Saturday morning like group for a lot of people who had come together. They weren't all survivors of domestic violence, but they all had experienced some kind of trauma, whether that was domestic violence, whether that was growing up with a parent who was an abuser. Some people, it was just the general trauma of being neurodivergent and growing up in this world as someone who didn't fit the mold, and those kind of little traumas that happened every day to them. And we were talking about how we estimated our own value, because we all do it. We all have that am I good enough question. And we realized that we were all doing this really terrible maths. We were like, well, I did this good thing, like I was kind to my neighbor and I helped her bring the shopping in the rain. And I did this good thing at work. I helped this kid at work, or I made a survivor of domestic violence feel good about themselves, or whatever it was. The good things were all, I did this. They were all performative. They were actions. But then we were taking away all these massive subtractions. And the subtractions weren't, I did a bad thing. They were like these sweeping statements about who we are. Like, I'm lazy, I'm disorganized, I'm disabled, I'm bisexual. For me was a big one, that I had to work through my feelings about my sexuality, what I'd been taught about it versus what is actually true, what I want to know about it. Yeah. Those were massive. They weren't just a -1, they were -10, a -100, a -1,000 in some cases. And so of course we didn't feel good enough. Of course we were drowning in the debt, because you can never do enough good things to outweigh the bad things you believe about yourself.
Yeah, it's very, very beyond true. Yeah, that is so true.
And it just came to me in that meeting, like, wouldn't it be really ballsy, really audacious to just go, instead of but, instead of minus, instead of like taking it away, what if we just switched it for an and?
Yes.
What if I did all those good things and I'm disorganized? And for me, one of the big ones that I'm still kind of working through is, and I'm fat. I exist in a plus size body.
Listen, I'm with you.
Like, we've been taught that it's wrong, but it's just a thing. It's another part of me. And I've got ADHD, and I'm this, and I'm that, and I'm never gonna win Miss World, and I'm always gonna have a kind of untidy desk. Like, those are, if we take those as ands instead of buts, then there is no subtraction. It's just a, we are 100%, we have our value, we we don't need to do anything other than exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And God, that's so, when I read about that in the chapter, and I thought, it's so important to know. And I think I'd done a blog recently on talking about, you can feel strong and you can feel weak all in the same day. You can, you can feel both emotions, especially when you're very much in the maybe the very beginning stages of processing abuse. You can have those days where you're going to get up and you're going to take on the world and everything's going to be amazing, and something will happen during that day that will then make you feel rock bottom again. You've been there and you're thinking, I can't keep doing this. So you can feel both those things, but it doesn't mean that you are a failure. It just means it's something else. Like you say, it's an addition to who you are. And when we add up all those additions of the good and the not so great, if we're feeling, I mean, mine was always like, I was crap at maths at school, so I always used to say, I'm stupid. And then when I remarried years down the line, I'd say to my husband, I'm not stupid, he said, I never said you were. But that was my own issue with that, that I had to get over. And I do think that there's a very big need for that understanding that, especially now with social media, with photoshopping and girls looking, I don't know, like I can't even say it, but all this need for perfection and to look perfect, and that's been growing for a long time. We all think it's been in the last few years, but I would notice it in sort of the late 90s, that kind of thing. It's been building for a very, very long time, this need for the perfect body, the perfect face, the perfect teeth, the perfect hair, all of it. And actually, it's such a simple answer: is there is no such thing as perfection. It doesn't exist. It isn't real. We are all human. We have flaws. We have things that are, that we don't like about ourselves, but somebody else might absolutely adore about us, whether it's your family, whether it's your partner, whether it's your friends. I'm a massive over talker, as I'm sure you well know, but I always look at that as like a massive downfall. And then I think, but then with friends or family, it's like, well, that's Lucy, isn't it? That's hopefully an endearing quality in some respects. But building up the
definitely an and.
but you have to get to that point, you're right, where instead of drowning in debt, and by the way, I love that, that's brilliant, you need to write a book, that, because people started thinking
Lucy. I'm like 4 chapters in.
I love it because it's so true. We can all drown in that deficit of thinking that we are, all the bad. And it's, I think a while ago, one of the blogs I did, I talked about the quote from Pretty Woman, for anyone that had seen it, and where she talks about, the bad stuff's easier to believe. Well, of course it is. Somebody can say to you, oh, that's a nice top you're wearing today. Somebody else can say, I can't stand that top, it's horrible. And you'll focus on that. You'll focus on the negative that somebody has thrown at you, because we are, insecure. We are lacking in self-worth, but especially when domestic abuse has been part of that package, unfortunately, we do take it a lot more personally, and we do then start to spiral and worry and panic, and it's not easy at all. And I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible. I do.
And you raised such a good point there, Lucy, that like we focus on that one negative thing in a sea of positives. And I think it's because it secretly plays into what we believe.
Yes.
Like if someone goes, oh, you're wearing that, they don't even have to say you look terrible, but it feeds into that part of you that goes, oh my God, like for me, it's always the, I look so fat. Is it my tummy bulge? Is it this? Is it?
Yeah, I'm like that.
And as I said in my chapter, that it supports the cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Like, I don't talk much about my ex-husband, mainly because it's my story now. Like, he doesn't get to be a part of that. But he definitely knew what all my insecurities were. He could push the buttons if he wanted to, because it, like, I had those thoughts in my head and talked about them. The other thing that I think is where we really need the audacious and is where, like you said, about your emotions. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I've got a couple of friends who are splitting from partners where their Some cases there's abuse, some cases there's not. They're just,
Yeah.
that relationship is naturally ending. And I think it's really important to be able to go, I can be leaving, and that's a really good thing. And I can be grieving the relationship that I had, and I can be sad about this.
Mm.
I remember, like, I can see now it was like what the first Audacious and that I embodied. I was at a coaching event for people who wanted to learn how to, like, love. I realized that my thoughts about love were really unhealthy. I saw a retreat called Be Love. I was like, I'm going on that.
Yeah.
That it sounds terrifying, but it's what I need.
Yeah.
And the person presenting that stood at the front of the room, and the thing she said changed my life. She said, you can be love, you can be loving, you can be kind, you can be a wonderful person, and you can leave someone.
Yeah.
And that for
Absolutely.
me was huge,
Yeah.
because I've been, even though I knew the relationship with my ex was abusive, I had it in his own words that he'd labeled it that himself. I still felt guilty for leaving.
Mm.
I'd stood in front of a crowd of people, oh, different cat this time,
I love it.
and I'd promised that I would love him forever, and then I had changed my mind. And
Mm.
I was carrying so much guilt about that, so much emotion about how I was the one doing the wrong thing by leaving.
Mm.
And that and was the one that really started to save me, that made me go, oh yeah, I can put myself first and be a good person.
Yeah. That is such an important point to make, because I've thought a lot in the past about, I find it really difficult when people say, well, you've left the relationship, whoop-de-doo, life can move on and everything's fine. And we know it isn't like that. We know it isn't that straightforward. There is so much packaged up in that relationship, and it is so hard because it takes time to unpick. And when you are, an empath, you will feel guilty about it. You will feel, and more often than not, I think anybody I've worked with who's experienced domestic abuse, more often than not, is empathetic. They love the person, and they believe they love the person, and from their side it is genuine love, but what they're receiving isn't love, and that's the difficulty. And I think what society should learn to appreciate is that just because somebody has left a relationship that is abusive, it does not mean they don't have the right to grieve for that relationship. Don't stand on the outside and say, well, hang on a minute, you've left now, you should hate that person. Yes, there's parts of you that's angry, there's parts of you that's, devastated, there's parts of you that think what the woulda, coulda, shouldas, all of that. But it's nobody's right to judge you and say, well, you should think that well, you're out now, you should be grateful, you should be thankful. You're actually grieving. You're right, it's 100% true. You are grieving. And I think that's something that, if you were, like you just said about your friends, if you were leaving a healthy relationship, and a relationship that just has broken down because at one point it was healthy, now it's got to a point where actually we just don't feel the same way about each other anymore. Things have changed, they've changed, and it ends. That's one thing, and you still grieve that. So how much harder is it when you have put that effort into a relationship and it ends, not because you wanted it to, but because you had no other choice? You have no other choice other than to say, I cannot live like this anymore. And if you are, and I always say this, not everybody wants to leave. And some people find that really difficult when I say that. Some people actually want to stay in the relationship, but keep themselves safe. And that has to be their choice. It's got to be. We can't force anybody into anything as much as we want to. We have to. But hopefully over time, if we educate people enough, if we talk enough, then they'll see for themselves, actually, my life doesn't have to be just playing it safe and trying to keep safe. I can have a better life. And yes, I'm going to have to grieve for that relationship. But like anything in life, grieving, it evolves over time, doesn't it? And because, when we lose a loved one, we're devastated. Of course we are. And then over time, we can start to look at that grief and think, okay, but you know what that person taught me? Could be, for me, it'd be my granddad. I miss him every day, but the grieving has got less and less over the years. And it's because I look at all the things he taught me and all the things I learned from that relationship with him. So if we can look at it from the same perspective with, sounds silly, but abusive relationships, where actually that relationship taught us not to settle. It taught us not to put up with being treated like we're nothing, because we're so much more than that. Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
And I think as well, like I was with my ex for 15 years. And whenever I say that, people kind of, first of all, they look at my baby face and they go, how did you get together when you were 3? It's just a baby face, good genes.
Yeah, you've got a lovely face.
But people like, I used to always feel this sense of judgment of like, you're saying it's abuse and you were there for 15 years. Like, why did you stay? Why did you stay feeling? And I think people need to appreciate that if it was unrelentingly awful all of the time, you probably would leave quicker.
Mm.
But actually, it's not always awful. You have periods where it's awful and terrifying and you're scared beyond belief. But you also have periods where I used to call it you're following the rules. You're the perpetrator is really happy with you. And so you have lovely moments, or they're using what the Freedom Program would call the persuader archetype. So they're actively love bombing you. They're making you feel like you're the most wonderful, best person out in the world. Like it it feels like you're standing on shifting sands.
Mm.
And I think another and that I've learned to embody is that it's okay to look back fondly at some of the things that happened
Yeah.
and say it's abuse. I used to like when I was accessing the Freedom Program, I used to have a text message conversation with one of the other people there where we'd remember something good that happened and we'd be like, it was abuse, wasn't it? Like I didn't imagine this. Like, please just validate that like
Yeah.
this wasn't a healthy relationship. But what I've learned now is that you can have those ands. You can go, yeah, that moment on that holiday that we went on was lovely. And a couple of days later, you
Yes.
the right Burke, and it was horrible.
It was vile again. Yeah, exactly.
And a few days later, we had another lovely time. Like you don't have to just consign that time you're in the relationship to the bin and go, God, I wasted those 15 years of my life.
Mm.
I had some real amazing achievements in that time. I had some lovely experiences. I got a master's. I had a whole career. I became part of who I am.
Mm.
And I picked up a lot of habits I had to unlearn.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And God, that's so, it is important to remember that you can, like you say, there can be those moments, because what the abuser will do is obviously, it started off with the whole, as we now know the term as love bombing, if people use that term. And you do feel like you are absolutely adored, and then things change. And the sad thing is, every relationship has ups and downs. I don't know of anybody, even those who haven't been in an abusive relationship, who don't have days where they, you have a coffee with a friend and go, I'm going to lose it with him today, or whatever it is.
Say too loudly one more time.
Leave the top off the toothpaste, leave the toilet seat up, whatever it is, yeah, of course we all have those moments. But the sad fact is, with an abusive relationship, it's exactly what you've just said. There'll be the lovely moments, and then it will descend into hideous, awful, name calling, the physical abuse, the sexual, the emotional, the psychological, all of that, financial, everything. But then it goes up again, and this is the whole trauma bond, isn't it? Again, another term that is now used more and more, because it becomes normal to you. So that for you is your normal relationship, because yes, we've had our fights like everybody does, but we're okay again now. And we'll stay like this and it'll be fine, and we'll probably fall out again, and then that'll happen. But it's when it gets to the point where you're just waiting for those moments when you're happy again, that's when you realize that this isn't a normal relationship. Because for most people, your marriage is hopefully, or not even marriage, if you in a relationship and you're in a long-term relationship, you choose not to get married, people can do what they like. But whatever the situation is, if you're in that relationship, then you would like to think that the majority of it is happy. And yes, you do have your fallings out, because that is normal. You know, we don't all agree on everything. It's when it becomes a pattern of behavior that goes on and you're just waiting to get back to the good bit. Let's just get through this awful bit, you know, let them have their temper, let them have their, I remember somebody once saying to me, oh, they know how to manage my temper. And you just think, right, but why would anyone need to manage your temper? You know, why would you need to manage it? Why would it be something that had to be managed? We all have days where, you know, everything's going wrong and we go FFS or whatever it is. You know, you have to be a saint if you don't do that. Let's be honest. We all have those days. I'm finding them more and more since I'm perimenopausal. But anyway, you know, I'm definitely finding it more and more. But we don't, you know, my husband doesn't need to manage me and say, okay, well, you know, we have to deal with Lucy in a certain way. It's not like that, and it shouldn't be like that. And sadly, with a domestically abusive relationship, we hear this term walking on eggshells, and that's something that a lot of people find themselves doing just because it's easier. You know, don't rock the boat, don't say what you're really thinking or feeling, because you know it's going to explode. But you have to also accept that you are entitled to be happy, as anybody is, you know. And it's so important, this and for me, I've found more and more now when I've had days where, and like I do, some weeks are fantastic, other weeks I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, and I do have to remember, go, okay, so I can feel positive and I can think, well, that's not great, whatever it is that's happened. We have those moments. We cannot be like something out of a Disney film 24/7, can we? You know, skipping down the road and everything's wonderful. That's not real life. And the work that you're doing is so important to get that message out there, that we can make a difference. Because so many people will say, can we really change, you know, kind of the stigma around domestic abuse? Of course we can. Absolutely, because there isn't the reason I wear the t-shirt saying you don't own me is because it's nobody owns anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. There isn't a certain type, and I hate that when it's like, well, that person clearly was a victim of domestic abuse. You don't know what a victim looks like, because it could be anybody. There isn't a type. There isn't a certain person or demographic of society that is a victim of abuse. Anyone can be. And it doesn't matter who you are.
Like, I remember just before I went to my first freedom program session, Newcastle Women's Aid were fantastic. Like, I always say they saved my life, and like I credit them with so much. I remember on the drive to that first meeting, sitting there going, I can't be a victim of domestic abuse because I am well educated. I have a master's. I've got a full-time, well-paid job. I'm smart. I'm like kind of middle class.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even as a survivor of domestic violence, sat at Women's Aid, I had all those images running through my head of what a typical survivor of domestic violence was like. And then the people there were like doctors and nurses and
Yeah.
lawyers. And I was like, oh my God, they're all smart, hilarious, amazing
Yeah.
women. And there
Absolutely.
were people who worked in the local betting shop and Asda, but they were brilliant, funny, wonderful women. None of them looked like that kind of
Type that you expect to,
type, the
yeah.
poster of the woman with a black eye. Like,
Yeah.
and it really just opened my eyes to the fact that, yeah, how we thought about it was so wrong.
Yeah.
But I think I can see the seeds of change, and there's people like us out there in the world who are not only working towards it, but who are starting to open up. It's one of the reasons that I talk about it, is because I think like people don't look at me and go, survivor of domestic violence. They see someone who's articulate, who talks passionately, who puts herself out there, and
Yeah.
then I go, oh yeah, I had 15 years of domestic violence, and they go, oh, like
Exactly.
I like, even just moving through the world, living a life that makes me happy is part of my activism,
Yeah.
I believe, because
Yeah.
then I'm going, yeah, this is what's possible. And I will have my down days and I will have my snappy days, and I have an awesome life.
Absolutely. And you can, I think this is one thing that where we are very similar, in the sense that we're trying to give that hope. It is that ever kind of fundamental, important aspect. What's the one thing, if you ask people, apart from money, you know, if you said, what do you want in life, or what do you want out of life? We all want to be happy. No one says, I want to be really, really unhappy. I want to be really, really miserable. Everybody wants to be happy. And whatever happiness is, in whatever form that is for you, then that is doable. It is possible. There might need to be things you need to change. There might be things in life you need to accept that, you know, you're putting on yourself, or you're putting yourself down, or you need to work through things. But it is possible to be happy. And I do think that that's another stigma around domestic abuse, is a lot of not only people who've experienced abuse, but society as well, treat victim survivors, whatever comes next, they treat people with this sort of attitude of, well, that's kind of like, you know, stained your life forevermore. So are you ever really truly going to be happy again? Because we talk about trauma, we talk about triggers. Yeah, you can have all those things. You can have a cupboard door slam and be jumping and panicking because loud noises scare you, but it doesn't mean the rest of your day's ruined. You can have that happen, and you can go out and have a lovely coffee with your friends and have a laugh and a chat and spend time with your kids, or spend time with your friends, or go to the cinema, or whatever it is. You can still have a fun life, an enjoyable life, and have moments where you go, okay, so now I'm feeling that I'm kind of being pulled back to where I was. I call it being like sucked down, you know, a tunnel, like you see in the light and then you're being pulled back in again. And it will happen, and you know, and it isn't, I often say this in different blogs, right? It isn't just like all of a sudden a eureka moment and everything's fine, everything's wonderful. There will be days where you think, today the best I could offer was to get out of bed. And the best I did today was to get up and see the day through and think, what time is it till I can actually go back to bed now? But and there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, because then it's your own body, your own mind telling you, you need to rest. You need to say, actually, I can give it a better go tomorrow if I just give myself a little bit of understanding and self-care. And that well-being aspect is massive, isn't it? Knowing how to find the things that make you happy, you know, find the things that bring you joy. And it doesn't have to be expensive. I always say that. It doesn't have to be something that costs the world. It can be going for a bath. For me, in my case, going for a bath without children knocking at the door, wanting your attention, you know, just that little bit of a moment of for yourself. And we can all find those moments. We make excuses and we say, well, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the time. You do. You just need to stand back for a minute and tell yourself, I am allowed to do this. I am allowed to go and read that book for half an hour on my own. I am allowed to have an early night. I'm allowed to stay up. I'm allowed, you know what I mean? It's so important to take back your life, but in a way that makes you happy.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I think we're fighting against what we've been like, and I'm going to use some gender stereotypes here. People who are raised as women, we are taught that to be a good woman is to sacrifice. I grew up watching my mum spend the least on herself for clothes. She'd buy everyone else nice clothes and go to the charity shop herself. If there was a piece of the pudding she was serving that collapsed, that was her bit. She had the mangled piece of pie, the slightly burnt chips, she gave herself less so that the people she loved had more.
Yeah.
That is what we are taught means to be a good woman. And we really need to unlearn that. We really, like, that is so toxic, in my opinion. Because, yeah, it teaches us that our happiness is not worth prioritizing.
Yeah.
And actually, I believe that we all have the fundamental right to be happy. It's not easy.
No.
It like, for me, choosing that happiness is actually the hardest thing that I work on, of reminding myself I'm allowed to rest. I'm allowed to do something just for fun, even though I haven't stacked the dishwasher yet, even though I need to run the Hoover, I can spend half an hour on my Switch. Like, whatever those things are that make you happy, it's so difficult to give yourself the permission to do that, because you've got that internal rule in your head of, to be good, I must perform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that again is something that in the future for me, you know, how I was talking to somebody recently about this, and it's how do we, you know, our kind of generation, well, you're younger than me, so not, I'm older, but anyway, people who have experienced abuse and are at the ages they are now, so like, you know, sort of the 30s, the 40s, 20s, we're kind of in it and we're trying to learn how to process it and all that kind of thing. Those sort of age ranges are people who are trying to process what has happened, 50s, 60s, 70s years of age. There is that opportunity to help the younger generation. Like you say, you know, we have these learned behaviors of you're watching your mom suffer, you know, and somebody else will watch their dad go out and work all night long and never see them, or whatever it is. And we have these learned behaviors of how we think relationships should be, how we should behave as a woman, how we should behave as a man, how. And the sad thing is that if we could educate the younger generation to say, it is okay to treat yourself. You don't have to go crazy, you don't have to go mad if you haven't got them, don't go getting yourself in ridiculous amounts of debt, obviously, but enjoy your life, you know, but also have boundaries when it comes to the relationships that you have, not just with potential future partners, because I would imagine in year 6, I would like to think, as much as they all like to think that the boyfriends, girlfriends walking around the playground is very different to a relationship when you're older. But those are the kind of ages where they are really formative years. And I'm really passionate about that. It's something I often think about is, and I think because I have children and I do have, you know, an 11-year-old who's just started secondary, and those kind of conversations around boundaries and being able to say no, be confident. You can be confident without being cocky, you know, you can be funny, you can be all these things, and you can also say to friendship groups, that behavior is not acceptable to me, sorry, I'm not interested. I don't have to bow to peer pressure and do what you do, you know, all the things that we all probably did because we thought that was the way to stay safe, or keep your head down, or keep quiet, you know. And we played it small.
Loved. Like for me, that was such a big one. Like I mentioned my ADHD. I only found out I had ADHD a couple of years ago. I was the weird kid. There's no other way to describe me. I did not know
You're
the
not
rules
weird to
to fit
me.
in, but I wanted to be loved. I wanted to belong. I wanted to fit in. And what I did, like, I bent myself into the tiniest box possible to fit in, to fit the mold. Like, I always say with coaching, and this is one thing I really want, like, would love people to take away, is that people talk about their personal transformation. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the most you version of you and loving the hell out of that person. Like I've done a lot of, like, I've been coached a lot myself now.
Yeah.
I am more me now than I was 10 years ago. I haven't turned into a different person. I've reclaimed that person because the person I get love from first and foremost now is me.
Yeah.
I don't need to go looking for it outside of me because I'm bringing it myself, even when it's difficult. And I have those moments of going, oh God, why the hell did I say that? My impulsivity took over and I was like, oh, that I regret saying that. But you're so right that if I'd known at 10 or 11 that I didn't have to sacrifice those bits of myself to fit in, to feel loved, to feel appreciated. Like, I think one thing we never talk about is that emotional abuse isn't just in romantic relationships.
No,
It can
no,
be in friendships too.
of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the difficulty with the definition of domestic abuse, isn't it? It's intimate partner, you know, sort of relationships. And it is so much more than that. And it's so much more open to that. Well, it needs to be more open to interpretation as what abuse looks like, because you spend more of your time at school when you're a child than you do at home. You know, my daughter will come home from school in floods of tears because it's secondary, and she'll go, I've not seen you all day and now I've got to go to bed, and then I get up and I'm at school again and I won't see you all day tomorrow. And they are actually spending more time with their friends than they are their family. So if somebody is being abusive, or like you say, emotionally or psychologically at school, abusive to them, saying, you know, I don't like your hair today, or I don't like you, you know, the way you've, I don't know, because it's uniform, isn't it? I don't like the way you look today, just the look on your face, whatever it is. Don't like your packed lunch that your parents have made you, whatever it is.
Don't have the right
You have the
shoes.
right oh God, I've been there with that one. And it's, I mean, I'm on a 6 and I'm number 4, so I had a lot of hand-me-downs and I had to try and make it look good. I had to try on own clothes day, walking there going, yeah, this is a secondhand suede jacket that's my brother's, and my brother's shirts, my brother's school shirts I used to have, because they button up like button up in the different way, and I just mortified. But I just had to try, and as my grandmother would say, fake it till I make it kind of thing, and that's what got me through, was fake it. But I don't fake it anymore, and I go around emblazoned with "You Don't Owe Me" on because of that exact reason. I don't have to fake it, and I think if we accept that, like you say, you're 100% right, friendships can be so damaging. Absolutely. If your face doesn't fit, that is such a lonely place for children to be, and it is abuse. It is 100% abuse how we treat one another. And it has to get to a point where children are educated enough to spot those signs. And it is a very scary place to be, where you eventually say, enough's enough. I don't need to be part of this gang. I don't need to do this. I don't need to be calling people behind the backs. I don't want to be that person. It takes a lot to stand up and make that decision, and it can be quite lonely, but you at least can put your head on the pillow at night and feel better about yourself. And when you look back on your life, you can think, actually, yeah, I am a good person. I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm proud of who I am, and being happy and being proud of who you are, for me, are 2 of the biggest things I could ever wish for. And I'm going to sit here and say I'm both, and I don't care if it sounds arrogant. I am happy and I'm
Love
proud.
it. Claim it. Oh my God. Yeah. For me, one of the big factors in me actually admitting that there was a problem that in my relationship that I needed to change things. It wasn't quite at the point where I was like, I need to leave, because you go through that thing where I'm like, I can fix it, it'll be fine. But that moment that I realized, oh God, I can't let it go on like this. It was a Christmas gathering with all my family. Like, I'm the youngest of 4, so all my siblings did all the stuff ahead of me. I've got 7 nephews and nieces, like. And there was one Christmas gathering where the way that my ex spoke to me in front of my niece, who's now 18, but at the time I think was about 11, 12, like just starting secondary. And the way he spoke to me in front of Meg, and I didn't do anything. I just let it happen, because that's what I did. I made myself small. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I messed up. I'm so sorry. I tried to fix it. And then that night I'd lay there and I was like, oh my God, I don't want that for her.
No.
I don't want to teach her that that's what a good relationship looked like, because she, at the time, thought her Auntie Anna was the coolest person in the room. Like, I'm like 16 years younger than her mum, so I have the privilege of being the cool aunt.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want her to look at my relationship and go, oh God, yeah, that's what I want growing up.
And that's what I will accept, and that's what I will stand, and that's what I will put up with. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the, you've given so many things to take away today, but that is a huge one, isn't it? It is the legacy that we're leaving behind for future generations. It is that what we are showing other people, especially in our family, younger members of the family, what we are willing to put up with, because they look up to us. Like you say, your niece looks up to you, my daughter looks up to me. And if we allow people to treat us in a certain way that is not acceptable, then, not that we're as much to blame, but we have a part in that, where we have to accept that, we cannot be doing that. We cannot be saying it's okay. And that's one with my daughter. One of the things that, if something isn't acceptable, she's hilarious, and she goes, it's unacceptable. And it's as simple as that. It's one word, unacceptable. And we're allowed to say that something is unacceptable, and I think if we can kind of change that language, and enough people now have relationships, hopefully, with their children, where it seems to be very much more open these days. Like, again, going back to my sort of era, it's like, children were seen, not heard, that kind of thing. Whereas parents seem to have very much more of a you know, and I try with my kids, is that the two-way street of respect. You know, I will respect them if they respect me. So we do have that opportunity now. A lot of parents do have that opportunity, and aunties and uncles, we all can have those conversations, and maybe just be a bit more aware if we see somebody in our family who's a younger person and they don't seem like they're being themselves, or there seems, you know, because sometimes it's your gut, isn't it, with your family, you can just sense that something isn't right, that we maybe just have that conversation and not push it, but just say, is everything okay? Are you okay? Because sometimes you might find that they will open up to you and say, actually, no, I'm not, and I need to talk to you about this, you know. And I will always say, we can't force conversations with anybody, whether it's an adult who's experienced abuse or somebody who's younger. But what we can do is be there and make it clear that by our behavior and how we conduct ourselves around, you know, people, and what we won't stand for, maybe they will think, that's somebody I can talk to, because yeah, all right, I can, you know, build that trust, build that level of conversation with them. And it's so important, because, you know, you would never want anyone to go through what you went through in a million years, and so many people will say that. I would never want anyone to experience it, but you have. And what you're doing is incredible, and you're just smashing it, really, aren't you? Let's be fair. You're just smashing it. You're just awesome. And you're awesome, and you're fabulous. And I love the hair colour, by the way.
There to be like, oh, I'm doing all right. Like, no, I'm gonna claim it. I am smashing it at the moment.
You are. You are,
And
absolutely.
yeah, like I totally agree, Lucy. Like the generation of the people parenting at the moment, like when I talk about cycle breakers, that's partly what I mean, is that they are breaking the cycle for the next generation. They're leaving that legacy where they've changed it. But that's why I've got a program that I'm going to be kind of launching in the next few weeks called a self-loving legacy. The self-love part of it is the huge bit. Like you say, you can't make someone open up. You can't make them leave. You can't make them change, but you can model to them how to love yourself.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Absolutely.
and that for me is the key, is it starts in here.
Yeah.
Like with all those ands that we're embracing, if you start in here and then live your life from that position, it is inspiring. Like my favorite testimonial I've ever got was it's from the person who's now my VA, Steph, and I love her to bits, and Steph knows I use this quote a lot. But the testimonial she gave, I asked the question, like, why would, if you were talking to someone who was thinking of working with me, what would you say to them about why you started working with me? And she was like, I saw how you moved through the world and I thought, I want a piece of that.
I love that.
And I was like,
Love
oh, like
that.
that is it. Like, if we can move through the world with self-love
Mm.
and unlearn all this shame and this ickiness that we carry around and just see ourselves as whole and complete people
Yeah.
with bits that we think, oh yeah, I really want to work on that. And
Yeah.
it'd be nice if that was a smaller piece of the pie chart that is me.
Yeah.
We can grow and we can accept all those things. And if we can move through the world like that, people are gonna want to listen to you. They're gonna want to follow you. They're gonna go, oh my God, I want a piece of that.
I want to be like that. Yeah, I want that to be how and that's the thing, isn't it? How we're all remembered in the future. Do you want to be remembered for putting up and shutting up, or do you want to be remembered for going? Because I had never thought of that until recently, and I thought, God, I don't want my children looking back going, well, she just sat back, took everything, and, you know, never stood up for herself. I want them to see, actually, she's trying to, you know, she wants to run her own business, she wants to do this, all the things that, you know, we all thought we could never do. You can actually do it. You can do it. You just believe in yourself. And like you say, start off with that self-love, knowing that you are worthy of everything, all the good that comes towards you, and you deserve every bit of it. I think we need to do it. I'm just going to say it, like I was going to say, Bob, we do need to do another one. I can feel it. I can feel it in the waters already.
We could do it for hours. I'm so
Good.
passionate about this. I brought my little soapbox. I'm like, I'm here.
Listen, you are fabulous. You are absolutely fabulous. And thank you so much for joining me this morning. And I will be seeing you very soon. And if you want to, you know, anything to go on the website in terms of anything that's coming up, so anyone can go and have a look on the website and see where any links are for you. You're already on there in terms of the coaching. So yes, for anybody that wants to go and see what Anna's up to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
When you look at me,